You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 9th of May, 2025. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Georgina Godwin. Coming up on today's programme, we look to some important events in the Middle East. The Iran-Arab dialogue, the possible Iran-US nuclear talks and the visit of Donald Trump to the region.
Che benediva Roma.
Leo XIV is the new Pope. Who is the Chicago-born Cardinal Robert Prevost, and what does his elevation mean for the Catholic Church and the world? Another important election this week saw Friedrich Merz take on the Chancellorship of Germany, and he's been moving at breakneck speed ever since. We'll look at his agenda. Then,
the audience experience everything as he experiences it, so we never cut away to learn something from another scene elsewhere.
We'll hear from Lorcan Finnegan about his film The Surfer. And finally, we head to Venice to join our design editor Nick Manise at the Biennale. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Georgina Godwin. The Iran-Arab World Dialogue takes place in Doha this weekend, and Iran's foreign minister will be there as part of his visit to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. This comes ahead of possible US-Iran talks on Sunday. Well, joining me now is Yossi Meckelberg, Senior Consulting Fellow at the Middle East and North Africa Programme at Chatham House. Yossi, it's lovely to have you back on the show. Now, Al Jazeera Centre for Studies and the Strategic Council on Foreign Relations in Iran are organising this fourth edition of the conference in Doha. It happens from May the 10th to the 12th. The Iranian foreign minister will be there. Can you tell us who else will be participating?
Good afternoon, Georgina. It's an interesting dialogue, and it's part of, I think, bigger move by Qatar, whether there is the Doha Forum or other forums, to make Qatar as a hub of dialogues, and it brings foreign ministers, researchers, NGOs from across the region and well beyond. And all the idea, I think, especially the last year and a half, has demonstrated how volatile the region can be and deteriorated in a multi-front war. So this is kind of a counterweight of conducting dialogues to try to diffuse tensions within the region.
I mean, as you say, it does come at a critical moment for the region. What are the major transformations and rising challenges that will give this gathering exceptional significance?
I think there are many of them. To mention only a few, the negotiation between the United States and Iran over a new nuclear deal. We see of course, the Israeli war in Gaza, but also the relations with Syria, Lebanon, the changes in Syria, in Syria itself, which is still and unknown to which direction Syria is going. The new government in Lebanon and the role of the Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen and their constant blocking of navigation in the Red Sea, economic issues, social issues. So there is a wide range of issues to discuss, and the relation between the Arab world and Iran is crucial to it.
Well, let's pick up on that. Can we expect strengthened dialogue between the Arab world and Iran? What might that look like? After all, the title of the conference is Strong Relations and Mutual Benefits.
I think the first step already been done when Saudi Arabia and Iran resumed their diplomatic relations, which was a clear signal that both countries, two major countries in the region, want to diffuse potential dangers and escalation in relations. But the dialogues is about the changing societies across the region. We saw again what happened in Lebanon with a new government, the reduction of the power of Hezbollah, the revolution and toppling of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. the ongoing war in Gaza, but at the same time the society is changing. The societies are changing there. Those are very young societies. The role of much of the origin of wealth in the Middle East has to do with energy, with oil, and natural gas, and we see how this is changing in the world, at least in some parts of the world. So they need to look into renewable energy and looking for other sources of wealth. So there is a huge range of issues to discuss.
Now, you mentioned the potential talks between the US and Iran on Sunday. If those do go ahead, what do we expect?
I think the first good news is that this is the fourth round, so it meaning nothing went too wrong in the first three rounds that took place either in Rome or in Oman, in Muscat, and this is the fourth round. Both sides tried, on the one hand, to project strengths and the fact they are not going to compromise their national interests or what they set to achieve, but at the same time also projecting the readiness to compromise. I think from the Trump administration point of view, I don't expect him to acknowledge that the withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018 was a mistake, but obviously it brought Iran closer than ever to produce nuclear military capabilities. From Iran point of view, the sanctions hit hard. It also, from a military point of view, the Israeli ability to hit strategic targets at will also demonstrate that they need to reach an agreement on the nuclear issue, because the other option, which we hear from Washington, is the use of military force together with Israel. So again, this is a crucial moment on this issue, and I think we can detect some readiness to make the necessary compromises, but it's far from being certain.
Trump himself is travelling to the Middle East in the coming days. This week, he said he'll be making a very, very big announcement before he departs on the trip. He said it would be as big as it gets, but he declined to offer any specifics on what it might entail, other than to say it's very positive. I mean, this is not about renaming the Gulf, presumably. Any idea what he might be referring to?
Yeah, it's not going to be the second American Gulf, but this is Donald Trump, the reality show presenter. Is everything is big, and you need to brand it, and it's kind of to make sure that everyone is watching, gives us the trailer. But we really don't know. I don't think normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel under the current circumstances on the card. Maybe some agreement on other issue in terms of military cooperation, strategic cooperation between the United States in Saudi Arabia. Maybe some breakthrough on the nuclear issue with Iran. But again, we know that with Trump, there is peace within 24 hours, and everything is a huge announcement and unprecedented. But I'm afraid we'll have to wait and hear what is this big news all about.
At the moment, he's not scheduled to go to Israel, but do you think he might do that? Might this be some sort of Israeli-US cooperation on what happens to Gaza?
I think he said again yesterday that it's not planned. It will happen sometimes in the future, unless there is some huge breakthrough on a ceasefire, reconstruction of Gaza, something between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I think this time, unlike his visit in his first term in the White House when he flew from Riyadh to Tel Aviv, it doesn't seem to be the case. But there are pressures on to reach some agreement on a ceasefire on the hostages. But it seems at point the Israeli government, because its all coalition consideration, is quite resistant to that.
Yossi, thank you very much indeed. That was Yossi Meckelberg of Chatham House. Now here's Carlotta Rebello with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Georgina. Vladimir Putin has led Victory Day celebrations in Moscow with a grand military parade and a speech linking Russia's World War II legacy to its ongoing war in Ukraine. A unilateral ceasefire declared by Russia was rejected by Ukraine, which reported hundreds of attacks despite the truce. London Mayor Sadiq Khan has announced controversial new plans to allow limited building on the Greenbelt, which is land where building is heavily regulated to control urban growth. The move will help tackle London's housing crisis, and only low-quality sites near transport links will be used. Khan is aiming to build up to 1 million homes. And a survey by the Japan Tourism Agency has found that over half of foreign visitors reported no issues during their stay, a significant increase from previous years. However, other common complaints included a lack of public trash cans, language barriers and crowded tourist spots. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Georgina.
Thank you, Carlotta. Now, as we know, the new Pope was announced yesterday. He is the US-born Peruvian citizen, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, and he became the 267th Bishop of Rome under the name Leo XIV. Well, Juliet Linley, journalist and former Vatican correspondent, has been following this story for us. Juliet, remind us how we got to this point.
Georgina, so much has happened in Rome, but actually it was less than 48 hours ago that 133 cardinals were starting to file into the Sistine Chapel and started voting for the successor to Peter. Many started placing bets, as we know. Many were hypothesizing, will it be a European Pope, an African Pope, an Asian Pope, a conservative, a progressive? And then, wow, within 4 ballots, 2 puffs of black smoke, and they'd chosen a surprise new leader, a Peruvian American, as you said, who speaks so many languages so well, may I add. And he has such a mixed ethnic and cultural background that, Georgina, everyone seems to be claiming him a bit as their own. And I, for one, I have to say I was so chuffed to see that the New York Times this morning had tracked his maternal grandparents and found them to be of Caribbean and Creole descent from the Dominican Republic and from New Orleans. So, while the Pope doesn't identify as black, his brother said, this is certainly an interesting detail for non-white Catholics in America and for the world in general, including people of Caribbean descent as I am. But getting back to how we got here, Georgina. So last night, just after 7 p.m. Rome time, the new Pope was revealed. He looked quite emotional as he stepped out onto that balcony, and he gave a moving speech in which he emphasized peace, unity, compassion. He started off in Italian, saying, "Peace be with you." And then he switched to Spanish, which was, again, such a good move. And he didn't use English. Again, very interesting, even though he is American born. And all of this to a crowd of 90 to 100,000 people who had all gathered there in St. Peter's Square and in the surroundings because they couldn't possibly fit in the piazza. And then just to come back to today, this morning at 11, he was saying Mass to all the cardinals in the Sistine Chapel, the ones below the age of 80 and the ones above. And he referenced humility this morning. And he has a busy few days ahead, Georgina. He's going to have to organize his inaugural Mass. Many are saying it will be this Sunday, perhaps. And he also has to let us know, where does he plan to live? Is he going to be in the guest house or is he going to be in the Apostolic Palace? So much to still find out, Georgina.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to bring in veteran Vatican correspondent Christopher White now. Christopher, you were actually there for the grand reveal. Tell us about the atmosphere.
You know, it was quite extraordinary. It was the second day of balloting, and I think many of us thought that it was probably going to push into a third day. So when it came, 6 o'clock local time in Rome, and we saw white smoke, it was just immediate roars of enthusiasm and cheers. And that went on for almost a full hour and 15 minutes as we waited to find out who the new Pope would be. I was doing television above the St. Peter's Square the entire time, and it was just pulsing with energy, but also expectation, because, I mean, to know that a new Pope has been elected is one thing, but to have to wait a full hour and 15 minutes to find out who the person is just only adds to the suspense of the moment. So I think everyone here is still kind of coming down from that high today.
Well, talking about waiting for that suspense, you've already announced that you've got a new book coming out in July, Pope Leo XIV, Inside the Conclave and the Dawn of a New Papacy. So you deliver this authoritative account of the dramatic conclave that shaped this moment and the forces that got him to that point. And presumably what all that weight is about. Tell us more.
Well, I mean, one of the things that has long been almost sort of commonly held, universally held wisdom around the Vatican is that an American should never be given the papacy. It's been a long-standing sort of thought that America has too much power in the world as it is, and someone from the United States in the papacy would only add to that. And the Catholic Church is 1.4 billion people. Adding an American to that would just almost homogenize things a bit. But I think as we're learning more about Cardinal Provost's background, now Pope Leo XIV, we're told of a story of a man who really spans 3 continents, Europe, Latin America, and North America. And I think that's probably why so many of his brother cardinals who may have been skeptical of someone with a U.S. passport holding the office of Peter, that they said, he brings more to the table than just an American passport. He brings a more globalist perspective. And I think that's why we've seen him rise to the top. And many people, in a sense, look past that background. But it is quite shocking still.
Finally, Juliet, I mean, that figure of 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, that's only 17.77% of the population as a whole. Now, I get that that's quite a lot, but still, why is most of the world seemingly so invested in this? Or to put it another way, why is he so popular?
Well, let's face it, the Pope is a global figure, isn't he? He's not just a religious one. And when the pontiff speaks out, he touches on topics that are relevant to everybody, to all of us, no matter how strong your faith may or may not be. Whether he's talking about migration, or whether he's calling out for peace on earth, and whether he's talking about the importance of protecting our climate, or whether he's talking about social justice, capitalism. I guess you just can't underestimate the soft power that the Vatican actually does yield at a worldwide level. And then you also have the fact, Georgina, that the papacy is steeped in so much history. People are just fascinated by the rituals, I guess the centuries-old traditions, and not to mention the optics. Can we just look at the optics of a conclave? The setting. You've got Michelangelo's Last Judgment frescoed in the Sistine Chapel. You've got these bright red robes of these princes of the church. You've got the chanting in Latin. And even just looking at what the Pope chose to wear on the balcony, he chose the scarlet mozzetta, the scarlet cape, that Francis had actually chosen not to wear. And now I didn't notice whether he did choose red shoes as Pope Benedict had. But in any case, there's so much interest, also because this is, as we said, it's the first American Pope, and that's catching everyone's attention. And indisputably, like it or not, this is a very historic moment.
Juliet, thank you. That's Juliet Linley there. And before that, we heard from Christopher White. And Christopher's book, Pope Leo XIV, Inside the Conclave and the Dawn of a New Papacy, is available for pre-order now, and it'll be published in July. Very quick work, Christopher. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. Well, talking of quick work, since his rocky start on Tuesday, failing to gain an absolute majority of parliamentary votes in the first round, Friedrich Merz is now officially the German Chancellor, and he's been moving at dizzying speed. Chris Chermak, Monocle's senior news editor, joins us now in the studio. Chris, it's not even been a week. What has Merz been up to since taking office?
It's just been a few days, Georgina, and Friedrich Merz is really focused on foreign policy to start. So on his first full day in office, he visited 2 countries. He went to Paris to meet with Emmanuel Macron, and he went to Poland, to Warsaw, to meet with Donald Tusk. And that was important to him. He made a point of this, saying normally German chancellors visit France. This is quite common, the Franco-German relationship. He said, I'm going to visit both our most important Western European partner and our most important Eastern European partner for the first time. That was significant. When it came to France, it was about turning a new page. Macron and Olaf Scholz, the former German Chancellor, did not get along very well. There is hope that Merz and Macron will get along much better. And in Poland, there were some very stark signs of agreement on things like defense. Donald Tusk even making this point that he welcomes Germany rearming. How strange that sounds given the history between these 2 countries. And also talking about migration. And then on Thursday, he had a call with Donald Trump. So he has been very busy on the foreign policy side, promising to work towards a trade deal between the US and the European Union. Also talking about the war in Ukraine. Friedrich said the ball is very much in Moscow's court, exclusively in Moscow's court now, to agree a ceasefire. So those were some of the things that he's focused on leading up to a visit today in Brussels.
Well, tell us what he's hoping to achieve in the heart of the EU.
So he has made a very big point about European defence being his priority, Georgina. He said this right on the night of the election. In the first debate that was held, if you will, there's a sort of round table after the election in February with all of the leaders of the parties. And he said, my absolute priority is to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible, achieving independence from the United States. This is his priority. This is why he is in Brussels today. It is also Europe Day today. It's worth noting, while Russia is celebrating its own 80th anniversary of V-Day in Brussels. It's 75 years since the Schuman Declaration of the former French foreign minister, which basically laid out the vision for European cooperation. Merz already has met with Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, the European Commission President, and he described this whole thing for him also as a sort of coming home to Brussels. He was an MEP, a European parliamentarian, way back in the last century, which shows how far back he goes in politics as well. And both of them really showed a lot of agreement. They focused on European defence, both the need to spend money on European defence. This has been a priority of Merz, but also simplifying everything. Merz talked about the fact that we are producing stuff individually. We need to start unifying all of that so that we're not just spending money after money without actually boosting European defence in as a result of everything that's happening with Ukraine, Russia, and so forth.
And do you think he's likely to face many challenges when he tries to balance his domestic agenda and interests with what the EU would like to see?
He will face some challenges, absolutely. One of his priorities domestically is to get the German economy up and running. That is key for Europe as well. But if he doesn't succeed in that, and if the German economy continues to sputter, then that will have a fallout effect, if you will, on Germany's leadership in Europe. The same thing with the German military. He wants to get that up to scratch. He's gotten this sort of constitutional reform through Parliament that allows him to spend hundreds of billions on defence. Now comes the step of actually modernizing the German military, which again will matter for whether he can lead Europe. And then one other one that is worth mentioning, the biggest discord, domestic versus Europe, is migration. This is where Friedrich Merz has been very tough. He wants to essentially close Germany's border to migrants. This is a difficult topic within Europe. At the moment, Ursula von der Leyen said, well, he's allowed to do this temporarily. That is within EU rules. But there is disagreement with them on that, how long something like that could continue, and what Europe needs to do in order to get a hold on illegal migration, in order for Germany to kind of come back into the European fold on that. That's going to be one of the biggest sticking points going forward.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. That's Chris Chermak there. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. The Surfer can best be described as a sweaty psychological thriller featuring Nicolas Cage as a man revisiting his childhood beach in Australia to surf with dire consequences. The film was directed by Lorcan Finnegan, who spoke with Monocle Radio's senior correspondent Fernando Augusto Pacheco.
You can't stop a wave. Born in a storm, way out to sea. Pure energy. It's all building to this breaking point.
Lorcan Finnegan, director of The Surfer. First of all, Lorcan, I love the film, and I have to tell you, I love surf imagery. I wonder if you had any connection with surf at all before this film, or was it something new perhaps to you?
I've been surfing before. I wouldn't call myself a surfer, but I've surfed a few times over the years, mostly in Spain. And surf imagery, I was more of a skateboarder growing up, so there was a lot of crossover between skateboarding, snowboarding, and surfing. Like you, I'm familiar with a lot of kind of surf imagery, documentaries like Endless Summer and things like that I would have watched when I was coming of age, skating.
I thought a lot about Endless Summer actually while watching the film, because the setting was amazing, which of course was in Australia, which is a place you also worked before in Australia, right?
Yeah, I've shot some commercials and stuff there, and I've friends who live in Australia, so I visited a few times. So
tell us about the idea of The Surfer, how he came about with this project, because I know it was inspired by surf noir novels as well, but it's such an interesting take as well. He does talk a lot about masculinity and other incredible topics as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the writer Thomas Martin had an encounter when he was working in Australia adapting a book, and he saw two guys getting out of their wetsuits and putting on suits, business suits, and one said something to the other, and then they started like beating the shit out of each other on the beach in Sydney. And I think that's what made him start thinking about these guys who are like seem very together and well dressed, but then they obviously also have this violence inside them, and that was related to surfing in some way. Then he was looking at surfers in Lanuda Bay in California that run this beach, that they're these wealthy guys who live in these big modernist houses in a very exclusive area, and if you try and surf their beach, they'll attack you. But during the day they're obviously working with clients and in the public, and they seem very together. I think those aspects sort of inspired the story. And then that was something that just really interested me, seeing this like a character who at the beginning seems very together, but obviously he's got some underlying problems. He thinks that by buying this house, this materialist goal will help resolve his emotional and relationship problems. He's pinning it all on this one thing, that if he can have this thing, then everything else will be fixed. But obviously that isn't the case. And then he unravels across a few days, and seeing that happen to somebody, seeing like things being stripped away from them in order for them to get to the core of what it is that they need instead of what they want, was pretty fascinating to me.
Men are like engines. You've got to release a little steam now and then or you'll blow up.
And during this process of unraveling, as you mentioned, sometimes watching the film was like, is that real or not? There were a lot of kind of questions, especially in the middle part of the film.
Yeah, I mean, that's because I wanted this film to be from the character's subjective point of view. So the audience experience everything as he experiences it. So we never cut away to learn something from another scene elsewhere as he experiences it. So as he becomes more dehydrated and sunburnt and delirious, and he becomes unreliable. He becomes an unreliable narrator in a way. So you're not sure if he is who he is, and he's not sure if he is who he is. So the audience experience it along with the main character.
And there's something about being an outsider in the film as well. I mean, the film was directed by an Irishman, yourself. Nicolas Cage, of course, is American. And, the film was set in Australia with some Australian actors as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a tradition of the outsider's view in Australian cinema, with Walkabout being directed by Nick Rogue, who's British, and Wake and Fright was directed by Ted Ketchoff, who's Canadian. There's always been that sort of tradition in Australian cinema, but at the same time, we wanted to tell a kind of contemporary version of an Australian story and come at it from the outsider's perspective, because Nick's character is the outsider also, returning to the childhood beach home. So there was me being Irish, the writer being Irish, and the cinematographer Radek Lajczak is Polish. Everybody else involved in the film was Australian, all the crew and the rest of the actors and everything. It was a good sort of exchange.
No, I love that. And tell us, I've been reading, Nicolas Cage saying that actually the setting when he had to learn how to surf was actually quite a tough one, especially there was some sharks in the area as well, apparently. Is that true?
Yeah, no, it's very sharky. They have like an app called Shark Tracker, and you can open it up and you can see like where they all are, with the ones that have been tagged, and there was loads, and people had been eaten by sharks, like not, like right before we were shooting, I think while we were shooting, and there was even a guy on the actual beach we were filming on, a swimmer. He was in his 70s and he was attacked by a carpet shark. He survived, but he was in the hospital. So there's a lot of sharks. There's not much you can really do about that apart from not think about it.
Thank you very much there to Lorcan Finnegan. He was speaking to Fernando Augusto Pacheco. And The Surfer is in UK and Irish cinemas from the 9th of May. You can listen to the full interview with Lorcan Finnegan on the Monocle Weekly. And now we cross to the Venice Biennale, where our design editor Nick Manise has been absorbing buildings and Bellinis. Nick, I don't know how much you heard of that last interview, but a carpet shark sounds like something you might be or know.
I'm very, very familiar, not with the carpet shark, but just with, being a good Perth, West Australian boy. There is a point in your life where you start to question, is it really worth swimming or surfing? I mean, that obviously interview makes it sound like it is, but I think I've maybe retreated a little bit, and that's why I'm in London. Well, now technically in Venice, where I don't think there are
exactly
any danger of carpet sharks.
Yes, no sharks in the canals. But where exactly are you right now? Narrow it down for us.
I'm going to narrow it down. I'm sitting next to a vending, those claw games, the sort of Toy Story claw game.
Move away, Nick.
Like reach down and win a prize. I'm currently standing next to one of them. I'm experiencing right now. But there's it's just one of the installations in the Giardini of the Biennale. It's the gardens where all the national pavilions are for, obviously, the Venice Biennale. And that's just a little standalone project. You can win a little architectural drawing from that. But currently I'm looking at we've got the Austrian pavilion, the Yugoslavian pavilion, the Egypt pavilion, the Venezuela pavilion, and Brazilian pavilion. I'm surrounded by amazing structures, but also amazing exhibitions on display inside of them.
And are you spotting any themes that have emerged? What's tying all of these constructions together?
It's funny. I mean, I'm looking. I look at both Brazil and Egypt in front of me, and both of them have exhibitions that are sort of focused on kind of working with the existing urban landscapes that we already had. So Brazil, for instance, looking at case study projects and really championing them and highlighting them as better ways to build. So I think that's one thing that's come out of it. There's a celebration of great projects, and tens of thousands of architects, designers, developers, and just general enthusiasts will come through the gardens of the Biennale in the next 6 months or so. So having those sorts of projects for people to see, I think is really, really important. But then there's also a theme of, and it's appropriate, I'm standing in a garden right now, but there's a theme of working with the existing landscapes and the existing geologies that we have that each country has to work with. So, for instance, the Moroccan pavilion is all about working with earth and materials and taking inspiration, I guess, from the local geology that they have, and using that to build with rather than concrete or imported steel. So that's sort of kind of tapping into the landscapes and using that to inform our architecture is another thing that sort of jumped out at me over the last few days.
And finally, Nick, what do you hope comes out of this event?
I mean, I think it's what I kind of alluded to a little bit before with, there's tens of thousands of people that are going to come through the Biennale in the coming months. And I think it's really, you kind of talk to everyone and top line is that they hope that, I guess, the ideas presented here, whether that's like, as I said, Morocco, showcasing the potential to work with materials they have on site in Morocco, or Brazil celebrating their own buildings in their own place. I think that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping people see examples of how we can build better and really take that home with them. So, look, maybe when I come back to London, I commission a house, Georgina. I can dream. I can commission a house made from, I don't know, clay bricks that have been sourced locally. I think it's those sorts of things that we want to take away. Yes, you're looking at something from maybe the other side of the world, but what are the applications for the neighbourhood that you're in?
Yeah, and absolutely, when we know, of course, that we'll be seeing coverage of all of that in all the wonderful programmes and articles and design sections that you produce. Nick, thank you very much indeed. That was our design editor, Nick Manise, in Venice. And that's all for this edition of The Briefing, which was produced by Hassan Anderson. Our researcher was Francesca Gilks and our studio manager was Flynn Simons. The Briefing is back on Monday at the same time. In the interim, I will be with you live from our Portugal markets tomorrow here at Midori House. I'm Georgina. Thanks for listening.